Talks of Jamaica cashing in on heritage tourism has been happening for years. The most recent talked about stalled plan has been the one to develop Port Royal and make the sunken city a massive tourist attraction. Business interests have also expressed frustration at the government's slow pace to make this a reality and to monetize other potential tourism heritage sites. Howard Mitchell, who was president of the private sector organization of Jamaica PSOJ, at the time urged the government to vigorously pursue heritage destination status for Kingston. The government is aware of the value of heritage tourism. In 2017, Minister of Tourism Edmund Bartlett noted that the growth in heritage tourism offers tremendous opportunity for Jamaica and the wider Caribbean. In an interview with JIS News, he said recent international tourism trends have pointed to a shift from the traditional sun, sea and sand phenomenon towards a more interactive experimental form of tourism.
Joining us now is the Executive Director of the Tourism Product Development Company, Dr. Andrew Spencer. Andrew, welcome.
Hey, Dr. Spencer.
Thank you for having me.
About the first question, what is the visitor who comes to Jamaica for heritage tourism? What are they looking for?
Oh boy, that's so broad, and I'm excited because you're doing heritage tourism, because I've often said that our competitive advantage lies in our heritage. It's one of those things that's almost impossible to imitate in another space. You can take pieces of what resemble our culture, but the actual authentic heritage of Jamaica is what we have to unearth. Mm-hmm. So the average visitor who comes to look for that, the millennial at this point, and we're looking at the future, these are the same people who stay in Airbnb, who stay in Trench Town, who go down to Seaford Town in Westmoreland. These are the kinds of people who want to, we refer to them in tourism theory as the explorer. Doesn't want to be caged in the enclave type of tourism, but wants to go out and live the life that the resident lives. That's a typical
value in that tourist, because they're not staying in the all-inclusive and they're not staying at these high-priced boutique hotels. They are a lot of times perhaps on a budget. Is there still commercial value in that type of tourist?
Absolutely, and I'll tell you why this type of tourist is important, because they're the ones who want to spend in the community. It's why they don't choose expensive accommodation facilities. They'll stay in a bed in your home because they want to be able to go out and spend with the community. We've actually found that the spending for what we call the allocentric traveler is much higher than the psychocentric.
Really?
People think that the people who stay in the fancy all-inclusives are the big spenders, and some of them are. But really what you have are those individuals who want the pre-packaged tours. They spend a lot of time and effort getting credit cards so that they can pre-book, pay for everything, and come here and spend not a single dime.
But let me ask you though, Dr. Spencer. Heritage tourism has always been touted. I know Dana McCauley,
yes,
for example, has been talking about it for a long time. And we do have a lot to offer. Our food, culture.
Pike, sorry, my brain
McIntyre Pike.
Right, yes, yes. One is environment.
Yes.
Yes.
But that's where I wanted to go
Yes.
now. I mean, are we damaging ourselves in terms of how we have been treating our environment? Because the beaches are not as pristine as they were before. There's the way people dispose of their garbage, the damage that we cause to the drains and all of those things. It's a huge problem, isn't it?
It is a challenge, but I'll tell you how I view mass tourism, which is where I think you're going versus this more sensitive type. Yeah. Per capita, you're likely to have a greater footprint on the environment, which is where I hear you going. But we feel that there's a critical mass that you need from mass tourism, and because of all that Jamaica has to offer, you can then diversify into many of these other areas that we've been trying to. And we're very committed to that, which is why Jamaica is one of the few countries in the world, and probably only one of two in the Caribbean, that has a dedicated product development company, focusing on these issues, identifying the need to have more of this type of tourism. For example, we talk about over-tourism. We're not there yet in many of our spaces, but our approach to that is to divert a lot of these tourists outside of these concentrated areas into more of the unknown spaces. We have a partnership with Loop now, which is taking people to some of these unknown heritage sites and exposing them, teasing them out, getting people to understand that there's quality in some of these spaces that we just simply don't know about.
Part of why heritage tourism will be successful, or one of the ingredients,
yes,
Jamaicans have to know about the places for it to actually work.
Mm-hmm.
And there are lots of Jamaicans who don't know Jamaica.
Yes, yes.
How do we bridge that gap?
You know, there have been many campaigns. We've tried to embark on a staycation campaign, which is encouraging people to visit these spaces. But most of our efforts to getting Jamaicans into the tourism space have largely been to give lower room rates so that they can stay in hotels. I made a point today at another function that the only way you get your destination right is if you focus on the right pull factor. I don't go to Paris for a hotel. I go to Paris for the Eiffel Tower.
Absolutely.
I don't go to Rome. Yes.
But you know, Andrew, I tend to try and do a lot of staycations, right?
Yes.
And visit the various spaces and things. But some of these spaces you go to, some of the falls and that sort of thing, we don't have any proper control. So it's overrun by local people who really does a disservice to the offering, you know, with the harassment, the infrastructure sometimes around the attraction is not up to scratch.
No, we understand that. And so it's sometimes a quality issue. But here's where we come in as TPDCO. We work with the community. One, you mentioned harassment. We have multiple anti-harassment initiatives that are now trying to break the back of that. You speak about quality issues. We have an entire department dedicated simply to going in and looking at what is acceptable for an international market. We're looking at, again, dispersion. How do we move people out of some spaces into another space? How do we manage effectively? We have EIAs at our disposal of environmental impact assessments, social impact assessments. We have the data. I think we're in the best possible position that we've ever been to be able to treat with some of these issues. So I hear you, but I want to make the point that Jamaica has over 100 internationally recognized attractions. I was told by someone today that it's in excess of 150. Most of us know single digits, right? I mean, if I ask people, and some people tell me they've been to 8, 9, maybe 10 of these, and I put it to you that there's a lot of quality out there. We have some upgrading to do, you know, but certainly the quality cannot just rest in those 10.
And I come back to the differentiator because all our Caribbean neighbors have sun, sea, and sand. All our Caribbean neighbors have a shared history.
Yes.
Where if we're talking true heritage tourism, their stories are going to be similar to ours. So in that 100, 150 attractions, what is going to make the Jamaica difference? That's going to have somebody in spite of the crime, in spite of the fact that Jamaica is more expensive than a lot of the other destinations, what is going to make them choose us over one of our other Caribbean neighbors that's cheaper and safer?
I'll tell you why. We already have a super advantage just with brand Jamaica. And you made the point about crime. We've had some challenges, and every time, it's an interesting relationship that you wouldn't expect. Your crime figures sometimes go up, arrival figures go up even more exponentially. And so I'm making the point that there's inherent in the notion of Jamaica already a positive image that is fighting hard against any other negativity that would come. If we carefully plan, if we are very deliberate in our intentions to get individuals to a particular level. You know, when we go in and do training with some of these individuals, we realize that some basic skills that are required to get them up to the level. So we have a product development department that does that. Then they pass them on to product quality, which is supposed to help them to get licensed. Once we are able to put that stamp of authority, we can vouch for the quality of that space. We've had some good ones over the last few years. We have the Rastafari Indigenous Village. We're proud of that. We're very proud of what we've been able to do at Bunkers Hill. There are other things that we're intending to do that are unknown. For example, some of the things we don't like to talk about, some of the darker parts of our heritage, our history. You have the Zong experience, the Zong massacre in Black River. We're about to create a monument and an entire story around it. You know what's lacking for most of our spaces? The story is not told accurately. The narrative.
And that is something that I'm curious about, because oral traditions we're going to rely on heavily to ensure that we keep to the integrity of the story. That when a tourist comes and we tell them X, Y, and Z happens, we are factually correct with the X, Y, and Z that we tell of the history, the heritage. And so from where you sit at TPDCO, how do you ensure that we are not telling the people foolishness? That the community members who are a part of this storytelling are being factual?
It's a very delicate balance, because we also have the issue of ensuring that they tell their story authentically and that we don't sterilize it to the point where it loses all of its real essence. But we have a team now, and I'm proud to say that in the last year, we've got approval to hire heritage officers. And we're going for people who are trained in the area. I have one person on staff who I call the archaeologist. So I have 3 heritage officers right now, planning to build that team even more, who are now going in, looking at the stories. We're the ones creating storyboards. And these storyboards that we put in these spaces, sometimes somebody doesn't even have to tell the story, but we are teaching people what the inaccuracies are, correcting those. And if you're not so sure, look at the storyboard, point to it, take somebody to that storyboard. Recently, someone took me to a storyboard we had put up and said, look, this is what we need. We're in the era of millennials who are just taking pictures. They want to go and say, I've been there. And the sign in front of Milk River Bath, for example, is not enough. They want to have the wording that's there, and they'll take a picture of that. They'll go back and they say, I was here.
Yes.
Or they just send it.
But you know, I still come back, Andrew. I mean, I think Jamaica has some beautiful places, and I've gone to quite a few of them, right? I like to every now and again head out. But I still think that we have not been able to capitalize on it. So, I mean, it's one thing to say that you go somewhere and it's in a natural state, but in natural state sometimes it's not that attractive. Right. You need to build around it. I mean, I go to a lot of attractions overseas, and they develop the thing around it so that it's inviting, you know, so that the people who are there are properly authorized. You understand what I'm saying, Patrice? Yeah, that's what we need to capitalize. I mean, we have the #1 tourist destination in the Caribbean, right? Which is Dunn's River. And that's lovely. But why aren't we developing the other places like that?
Part of where Dennis is going is that there are some attractions that miss the wow factor.
Yeah, exactly.
You get a tourist that's coming here, especially when you talk about the millennials, and they're not okay with walking through and a boring, monotonous recount of a horrid history of slavery and beating of black people. They are looking to be entertained.
Yes.
How do we create the entertainment wow factor?
Important. So you see the wow factor now varies based on your type of tourist, and we're very keen on knowing who is coming to us and who we're attracting. So you're right, there are those who want that dark history, I've discovered, and there are those who don't want that. And so the idea is the tour, the narrative must appeal to the type of individual you're attracting to a certain space. Now, as you pull them, you have to be clear on what it is you're going to direct them to. And it's the point I was making earlier, Dennis, as we continue to upgrade. Well, you hinted at something. You say, you know, why are we not doing? I'll say we are doing. The progress is a little slow, but we're in there trying to get them up to the standard. Because I know the wow you're talking about. But here's what I was saying about the model earlier. If you don't allow your attractions to be the pull, they will not attract the resources to become the pull. What am I saying? If you are coming to a destination for its accommodations, for a big brand accommodation, and then you're directed to a few attractions on its periphery, there's something fundamentally wrong with that.
Yes.
When you go to Arizona, you're going for the Grand Canyon.
Yes.
It's just a reality, you know, and so therefore you're going to pump resources into the Grand Canyon. I'm saying the same thing. You highlighted Dunn's River, which is our poster child. Some other poster children have come up over the years too. You have other ones that have the wow factor, but we are trying to identify the winners in the location. So we're taking a cluster approach. We just got funding in partnership with JSIF to look at something called the READY program, which is to help to pull these things, these attractions up to the level that any international visitor can go into them and feel that someone has put some thought into this.
There's some grassroots fundamentals, and I see the work happening, but I don't see it happening enough. I was able to go to Akampong 100% with the directions of TPDCO sign.
Yes.
You spend Loomis there?
That's a whole other conversation. But a lot of our attractions are difficult to find. We're not big on signage, and we don't appreciate the fact that people don't come from here, not just non-Jamaicans, but even Jamaicans.
Very true.
We don't come from here. How do I find this place? And telling me that getting there is part of the adventure is not a story I buy. If I can't find it, I can't enjoy it.
Yes, no, I agree. And so we now have a big program. We have an all-island signage program. It's almost like you saw it coming. So you asked the question. We actually just committed in partnership with the Tourism Enhancement Fund, 25 million. And we're going to engage the NWA to execute a signage program to all of our attractions. Now, it brings us back to Dennis's point. If you start pointing people in the direction of these things, you better ensure that the quality is of a certain standard. So we're making sure that we get some of these things right. We're identifying the key locations that we want to showcase. And as we chart the path to getting these things ready, we're going to also ensure that when you're physically trying to go to them, you can get to them.
I'm staying on that cart before the horse. One in particular that I've been angst about is this whole Port Royal business. Pirates
Yes,
of the Caribbean
yes,
was a
yes.
gold mine for us that we should have capitalized on. We're
Yeah.
building out this whole port facility. The ships are coming. To what?
Yes. So as the product development company, we have been brought to the table, and you asked the right question, because to have a fantastic port when the outside environs from the port.
Well, not just support the history of the place.
No, I know, but in order to tap into that history, let me use Falmouth as an example. In order to tap into the history of Falmouth, you have to go beyond the walls, right? So when you create a little space inside a port that looks good, and there are those who want to venture outside of that space, you have to ensure that there's a, when somebody comes out, that there's a walking path into a space that makes sense and you're not stepping into sewage. These are things that the product development company, in partnership with the NSWMA, in partnership with NWA, partnership with NWC, in partnership, I put up a chart in the office of all the agencies that we interact with, and I ran out of space.
Because you're coming off of a ship, you're not mobile, you don't have a vehicle, you're new to the space, you're going to be walking.
Absolutely. And then you're going to need expert tour guides as well.
Yes, but I mean, I'm happy that Patria raised a point about Port Royal, because that for me has been a bugbear.
Yes.
I ride out to Port Royal all the while, right? And it's a place where a lot of people exercise between airport and Port Royal. But when I think about it, Port Royal in itself should be like a mini Disney World with all the history and everything.
I think you should be careful how you use that, you know, because there was actually a proposal
I know,
to pass by Disney World.
I know,
That we passed on.
but it should be, right?
Yes, yes.
There's so much history out there. The food is good. You know, the
Wenches
history,
and
everything.
pirates
Oh
and
gosh,
buccaneers
man.
and treasure.
Outside of that, Andrew, when you look at it, my concept is that the whole strip from the airport down to Port Royal should be developed with tourism-related things.
Yes.
Right down.
And that is the discussion we're having. I mean, we're having a discussion a little late, but we're having that discussion. The KSAMC is on board with us. We're having the discussions as well with all of the partners to make sure that we have almost another elegant corridor of sorts leading into, if you want to call it a hip strip. In fact,
Yeah, man.
we're thinking
it
of
should be a hip strip. That should be the entertainment place,
entertainment zone.
so that people in Kingston can sleep at night because they don't have the dances
excitement
going
that we have here about Jamaica and heritage tourism,
Yes.
I sincerely hope carries through, because there is an opportunity. And what I love about it is the opportunity is not for the big man who own the big hotel, it is for the people who live in the communities to tell their
Inclusive growth.
stories.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Inclusive growth.
Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much
man.
for having me.
Thanks.
More
for
point,
having me.
folks, after the break.